And we're happy to be joined now by 1993 Hall of Fame inductee Dan Fouts. Dan, it's good to see you again. First question I have to ask you is, what did you make of the AFC and the NFC championship games?
Well, very entertaining. I didn't expect Philadelphia to score quite that many points, but as far as Kansas City's concerned, they're the champs for a reason. Andy Reid called a brilliant game. He gave Mahomes every possible chance to be successful, and it's going to be an interesting Super Bowl because Saquon Barkley has proven to be a home run hitter. And we're not
Hmm.
seeing many home runs anymore in the NFL, whether it's by the pass or the run, until Barkley gets fired up. I mean, first play of the game. What a way to start a game, huh?
You played 15 seasons in the NFL, and obviously you're a member of the class of 93 Hall of Fame. Did you ever see a team like Kansas City that you faced that was just year in and year out? They didn't always win pretty, but they just always seemed to find a way to win.
Well, I was in the era of the Pittsburgh Steelers and Terry Bradshaw, their great quarterback, and also the 49ers with Joe Montana. But don't forget about John Elway in Denver. There were some pretty good quarterbacks back in those days. And that's the biggest thing is that whenever I faced a team that had a great quarterback, it made me, maybe focus a little bit harder in practice, concentrate a little bit more, work a little bit harder, because I knew that my opponent was a great player and he was going to probably have a great game against us.
You look at someone like Josh Allen, who plays for Buffalo, and is it a case of, and someone made a great analogy, and I can't take credit for it. Is this a case of like Carl Malone, John Stockton, Reggie Miller, Charles Barkley? They just were born at the wrong time. I mean, he is a great, what more could he have done on that game against Kansas City? He did everything they asked him to.
Well, and I think they asked him to do too much. I mean, how many quarterback sneaks are you going to expose your quarterback to? You notice Kansas City doesn't do that very often. And when Mahomes runs the ball, he runs smart. He doesn't take on tacklers. He tries to get out of bounds. So I think that the game plan for Buffalo, both offensively and defensively, was just plain wrong. You can't play man-to-man coverage all day long, especially when you have your best corner out with a concussion. So you look at that last play of the game where he hits P Ryan down the sideline. Well, the Bills were in man-to-man, and so they picked everybody off on the inside, and P Ryan was wide open. And just a brilliant call by Andy Reid.
Speaking of rushing quarterbacks, I did check your stats. You rushed for 476 yards and 13 rushing T days, 13 rushing touchdowns in your day. So you were in order to tuck it and run once in a while. You never took on Jack Ham very often, but
Well, I did have a 32-yarder against the Raiders, uh, and it was in the first quarter, and I was done. I could the rest of the game, my legs were all like noodles. It was terrible. So, I learned not to run after that.
you threw for over 43,000 yards in your career, and obviously you were playing under the great Don Coryell, which ushered in Air Coryell, which really changed the game of football. Do you see glimpses of those San Diego Charger teams and the attacks that you had using the tight ends in what Kansas City's doing now with Kelsey and their wide receivers?
Well, if you've got a tight end that's athletic and got good size and can run a little bit, like I had with Kellen Winslow, and the other element is intelligence, not only street smarts, but football intelligence. And that's what you see in Kelsey. He's not the fastest, he's not the niftiest, but he can just use that big body of his. He reminds me a little bit of Antonio Gates in the way he
Mhm.
positions himself against a defender. So, if you've got talent like that, you know that you're going to be successful, especially in crunch time and in third down situations. How many times has Kelsey ever been doubled? Hardly ever, it seems like.
So when you look at the Super Bowl matchup, you have the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously, and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs going for a three-peat. A three-peat, obviously, I mean, I can't believe Pat Riley has a trademark for that, but he does. But it's never been done in the NFL. And I think a lot of people think, oh, well, Tom Brady, not three in a row. Why is that three in a row such a, I mean, just getting to the Super Bowl is a major milestone, but why is that three in a row just unthinkable?
Well, obviously the pressure of everybody coming after you, and everybody getting your best shot. But I have a problem with them saying nobody has ever done this before because the Green Bay Packers before the Super Bowl,
True.
they were winning almost every year the NFL title. Well, the NFL title is the Super Bowl, and
Right.
so you got to look back into the history of the game a little bit, back to the '60s, and see what the Green Bay Packers did and how dominant they were. That doesn't mean that the Chiefs aren't dominant and are going to be a possible three-peater, but let's give some credit where credit's due too.
No question about it. Bart Starr and the whole clan back there, they were phenomenal. This is a big year, obviously, for Patrick Mahomes. Do you see him surpassing Tom Brady? I mean, he's still in his 20s, and now he is going to what is his fifth or sixth Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think he's been able to overcome injuries too. I think that's as impressive as anything. He's had some ankle problems. He runs smart though, and he doesn't resist the pass rush that's inevitably going to take him down. So you see it, like a Josh Allen, he's going to fight for some meaningless yards at times because he's such a big, strong kid and he can't do it. So as far as will he ever be able to overtake Tom Brady? That we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, to say no, there's no way would be stupid. Almost as stupid as saying obviously he'll get 10 Super Bowls.
Yeah. I'll put you on the spot on this just a little bit, but who do you like in this one? You're not a betting man, but if you had to pick a side, I initially was going Kansas City, Kansas City, Kansas City. But after watching Saquon Barkley, he seems to be such a different maker. And the way A.J. Brown now just causes such havoc in the secondary, I'm starting to lean maybe Philadelphia.
Well, and Hurts looks really good, and
Yeah.
he did a great job with his legs last in the last game. So, you look at that. Was it 49 points or 149, whatever they scored? That's a lot of points, and that's a lot of points against a playoff team. So I know the Commanders. They got behind early, and I think they got away from their game plan, which is pretty understandable. But Philadelphia can give you some problems. And you mentioned Barkley and Brown. Well, put Hurts in there too as the guy that
Yeah.
is the straw that stirs the drink.
Obviously, Philadelphia's got such a great offensive line, which opens up the holes for Saquon Barkley, but their defensive line is pretty solid too. Do you think they can scheme a way to, I don't say contain, but to get Patrick Mahomes off his game where he can't throw those sidearm passes, where he doesn't get the passing lanes that he wants?
Well, it's all about containment, and you notice about Mahomes when he scrambles out the right side of the pocket. So that left defensive end or the linebacker on that side has got to find a way to contain him. Once you start to run those games where the end goes inside and the tackle loops around, well, the tackle doesn't have any speed at all. Your fastest guy is your defensive ends there or your linebackers. So, yeah, containing Mahomes in the pocket, number one, it will frustrate him a little bit because he likes the big play, likes the dramatic, and he makes most of those big plays, those dramatic plays outside of the pocket. And really the difference makers, whether he's completing a pass or whether he's running for the first down.
You had a pretty decent record, almost Mount 500 in your playoff career in the NFL over 15 seasons. What is it? What is it about the playoffs? And after such a long season with the NFL, now with an expanded season, where do you come up with the strength? I mean, everyone's hurt, everyone's kind of taped together, but how do they get to this last game? It's and you get the week off, and then it's the big hurdle. It's a long season.
Well, there's no question. And, you talk about guys, everybody's a little dinged up, obviously. But, so is the other team. And so pretty much the field is pretty level as far as how everybody is physically going into the game. But it's some of them about adrenaline that gets you fired up. It should get you fired up for every game, but it's not always possible. But it is possible for the playoffs.
Yeah, you were able to call, I think, two Super Bowls in your broadcasting career. I remember the one in Atlanta with the big rainstorm that turned to ice and created havoc for everyone. What's the preparation like as opposed to when you're calling a regular NFL game as opposed to calling the Super Bowl?
Well, you hope it's not going to be that much different because every game is important. But obviously, with the Super Bowl, you've got better comparison numbers to throw at people. You got a whole season of numbers to back up whatever statement you may want to make. The key thing is though is to keep those in mind as the game's going on and see how they play out and whether you can be considered a genius after the game or not. Probably not.
You've done quite a bit in the broadcasting booth. And that, what is it about the NFL? And you speak from someone who played 15 seasons. You're in the NFL Hall of Fame. It's recession proof. It's international. It's just the monster league that will not stop, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. What is it about the NFL do you think that draws in people not only in North America but around the world?
Well, it's really a good question. I mean, the owners are brilliant billionaires for a reason. Well, they're smart, okay, and they've done a good job of forming a club. The club being the National Football League, where they share revenues, they take care of each other. You don't see a lot of bickering. At least we don't. The PR machine is very smooth, and I think because the game is played just once a week, that it gives people, a chance to dissect Sunday's game and then look forward to next Sunday's game.
Do you think that there's anything short of, I guess, a stoppage for strike or obviously labor that can derail it? Because I think even 20 years ago, the NFL came in August. You had the Hall of Fame game, and then you went through the regular season, then in the playoffs. And by the end of January, Super Bowl or first part of February, the Super Bowl's over. And then they kind of went dormant until the draft. Now the NFL has a footprint on every single month with OTAs, with trading, with the draft, everything else. It seems like it's a 12-month calendar for the NFL.
Well, it's live, okay. The football game is you can't fake it, okay. I don't think AI can play football, but the thing about it is that here you've got the suspense, the drama. You got these sidebars all the time, and as you said, their PR machine is pretty good. It has captured all 12 months of the year. I'm not so sure why OTAs are so much fun to watch or so interesting. Most of those guys that are at the OTAs aren't going to play in November at all. So anyway, that's just being an old guy, I guess.
They definitely weren't fun. The daily doubles and the summer workouts, not for you, I'm sure. Can I talk about coaches first of all? As soon as the playoffs start and the regular season's over, the coaching carousel starts, and that's a good place to start. A guy we know well, Pete Carroll, coming back again with the Raiders. Do you like that fit?
Well, he's the same age as I am, so I'm ready for a comeback too. Pete, Pete and I think you know this, we played Pop Warner football against each
Yeah.
other about 62 years ago. So anyway, it's good to see him back. It'll be interesting to see his relationship in that I want to call them Oakland Raiders, in that Raider organization when you got Mark Davis and now Tom Brady in there, and Pete Carousel, as you almost said.
Yeah, he's talented, and we know him well from his days at USC, and then he was quite successful in Seattle. So I think it's great to have him back. He's a great mind. Some of the other hires, though, Schottenheimer goes to Dallas, Aaron Glenn at the New York Jets. I was talking to someone, and they were saying, oh, they gave such a great speech at their press conference. I say, well, they all do until they get to August and September and then October, and then it becomes real. Of all the hires that you've seen so far, which one do you think it has the best chance of succeeding?
Oh, that is a good question because you got to look at their personnel that they're dealing with too, and how quickly they can change the culture and get their message and their system across. As far as who's going to have the most success, I kind of like the Schottenheimer hire a little bit in Dallas, but Dallas is in all of a sudden the toughest division in the NFL. And when you think of Philadelphia and Washington there, the Giants, of course, are just going to be there, but they're not going to really contend for a while. I never really thought that Deion Sanders had a chance to go to the Cowboys because Jerry Jones is still Mr. Cowboy, and he would have to share that title with a guy like Prime.
Of the rookies that you saw play, and I've always contended, having never played in the NFL like you, but it's so hard for a rookie to do well that first season. But the young man, Jaden Daniels at Washington, the way he came in and the poise, do you attribute that to he played a lot of college football? Bo Nix played a lot of college football. Do you see a quarterback coming out of college this year that you could think can do the same thing?
Absolutely. That's so key is getting experience. And the reason a quarterback is drafted high is because the team is not very good, and they need a quarterback to solidify that position. When you think about Daniels and what he did this year, uh, think about the big games he's played in his college career, and so you go from the high profile games like that, and you have got a coach who, uh, in Clint Kingsbury, he was also a pretty good college coach, as I recall. And so
Yeah.
a lot of the things that he did in college, uh, Daniels did in college as well. So there's a real good connection there between the two as far as, what type of plays they want to run, what type of personnel they want to use to run those plays.
Do you like the format, obviously, that rewards the teams that are low at the bottom of the thing, or does that kind of just perpetuate young quarterbacks getting just beat up? People talk about, Trevor Lawrence and the kid that came out of BYU, Zach Wilson, and they come in with such high profile, such high hope that they're going to do this, and then they go to these teams that have terrible offensive lines, and they just get hammered. They disappear for a while, and then like Sam Darnold, they kind of come back.
Yeah, it's interesting. Darnold got a lot of experience. Obviously, he was thrown to the Wolves with the Jets, and then went to Carolina, then the 49ers. So he's got that experience, but even all that experience didn't help him in that playoff game, which was
No.
really a shame because he'd had such a phenomenal year and looked like a lock to stay with the Vikings forever. And now we're all looking around, seeing where's he going to go because of having McCarthy getting better from his knee injury.
Way too soon to look at 2025-26 season, but I still call them San Diego Chargers, the LA Chargers with Justin Herbert, another great quarterback out of the University of Oregon. What are they missing? What do you, if you sat down with him and said, this is what you need to focus on the offseason, what would you tell him?
They have a generational quarterback in Justin Herbert, a guy that's going to be there. He'll probably play 18, 19, maybe even 20 years because he's such a physical specimen, number one, and he's very extremely intelligent. Uh, they've got to surround him with better receivers. Go out and find a Saquon Barkley. That would be good, you know. But their receivers are still unproven. There's not a real difference maker there. The tight end position is more of a blocking type of position. But that's the philosophy of Harbaugh, and he wants to run the ball, and so he's going to surround his quarterback with players that are going to do that. But in this game, when you've got a quarterback like Herbert, you're not going to find another one for another 15, 20 years if you're lucky.
With the Super Bowl still to be played, Kansas City and Philadelphia, other than Kansas City, as you look to next season, what teams do you think might rise up, or do you think it's going to be same old, same old?
Well, you got to look at Washington, number one.
Yeah.
They got all the way, to where they got to, and then they ran into, a pretty good team in the Eagles. But, again, you go back to coaching sometimes, and teams with the track record of being successful. How can you vote against or root against a guy like Andy Reid when all he does is win? And the same thing is said about Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, and John. They're winners, and so I tend to until the next Don Shula comes along. I kind of like to go with the front runners.
Yeah, no question. Do you see the NFL at a tipping point as far as the number of teams? And I mean, obviously they want to push it to 18 games, but do you think there's really traction to have an international, a European league or European part of the NFL? Because when they come to Europe or they go to Brazil, we talked about this earlier, games sell out in minutes. They're gone, whether it's Germany, Brazil, or England. And so if you were in the commissioner's office, would you say expand more or snail's pace?
Well, again, let's get back to those brilliant billionaires that own the teams, uh, they like it when a game sells out wherever, and so if there's a market, they will want to jump into it, and it would not surprise me that that doesn't happen within at least 5, maybe 10 years. But what also shocked me though is that the NFL Europe didn't take off, and it was not successful. I thought that that would be a great, almost a farm system type of situation. Really, the farm system is still college football, but it was a good exposure. But people want the real thing, and if the NFL comes over to Germany, they bring the real thing, and that's what the fans want to see.
Speaking with 1993 NFL Hall of Famer Dan Fouts. Dan, before we get you out of here, a couple final questions for you. Do you think with college football and the NIL and the transfer portal now, that is going to change players or the way players come into the NFL, or is it just going to be business as usual?
Yeah, I know the whole thing has changed. It's unbelievable what's happened. Can you imagine being a college head coach? Okay, think about it. You got to recruit high school kids. You got to recruit junior college kids. You got to recruit the transfer portal. And then you got to circle all the way back and recruit your own team to keep those guys that you brought in 3, 4 years ago to stay in your team instead of looking for the better opportunity, the greener pastures to make their way into the NFL. But, the game is still the game. College football is still more exciting than pro football because it's more unpredictable and you're dealing with, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, and you never know what's going to happen because they're not, they're still young and they're still a little crazy and wild, and they make things fun.
Speaking of crazy and wild, I was pulling for your Ducks this year. They look so good all year long. And I will have to say, I think they got the raw deal on the seeding. However, whoever came up with that theory that they don't get a home game and they get Ohio State out of the gate. Give all credit to Ohio State, who they went through to get to the title. But I just thought the body of work the Ducks did during the regular season, it's got to count for more.
Well, 3.5 weeks off. You look at the four number one seeds, all had 3.5 weeks off. What good did that do them? Not very much. They all
Yeah.
lost. And so they've got to figure out a way to tighten that up. But also, as you said, figure out the seeding system just a little bit better. But as you said, Ohio State, they're one of the best college football teams in the last 20 years. I mean, they were phenomenal with their late season run after losing to Michigan.
You tipped your hand just a little bit, and I'm going to press you on this because I can, and I'm not close enough for you to crack me across the head. But are you more of a fan of college or pro football? I mean, you've called broadcasts for both college and pro football at the highest level, and you played college and pro football at the highest level. So where are you spending your Saturdays or Sundays?
Well, on the couch watching games. No, as far as being an analyst on these games, the NFL is easier because the preparation and the continuity is there. College football can be really, as you remember, very tough when you go out there and there's 6 guys with a number 7.
Other than the pay structure and the money these guys are getting, which as a Hall of Famer, you've got to look at this and go, I got to come out of retirement. What is the biggest change that you've seen in the NFL since you retired?
Oh man, I can't remember that far back when I retired. I do know, I don't have a yacht. All these guys have got yachts now. I mean, that's crazy. The money is absolutely phenomenal, and I really salute the players for sticking with it and getting free agency so they can move around and make a good living. Oh boy, a couple of good livings. But as far as what's changed, I don't know, when the ball's on the tee and it's kicked off each Sunday, it's basically the same game.
All right, we'll get you out on this one. I got to get a prediction for you. What do you think for the Super Bowl? Who do you think is going to win it and why?
Well, it's tough for me to go against Andy Reid and the Chiefs, but I want an upset. I want to see Philadelphia continue, and I want to see Barkley bust off a couple runs. But again, when you think about how well coached Kansas City is on both sides of the ball, Spagnuolo is unbelievable with his creativity of putting pressure on the quarterback. And I see so many times quarterbacks aren't prepared to pick up the blitz with side adjustments or overloading the blocking to that side. He's just a genius on how he uh, puts pressure on the quarterback with defensive backs a lot of the time being the catalyst and forcing the quarterback to get tackled by like a Chris Jones or something.
So you leaning towards Philadelphia, or you think Kansas City's got it?
You caught me there, huh? You know what? I tell you what. Since you're wearing green, I'm going to go with the Eagles.
I wore the green in honor of you and the Oregon Ducks. I got to imagine as an NFL quarterback, if you're going to the Super Bowl and you're facing a team like Kansas City and Andy Reid, and you talk about all the personnel they have, and then you heap on that Taylor Swift as a broadcaster or a player, how do you handle the Taylor Swift effect?
Calm down, Todd. Calm down. Of all the interviews I've done in my life, that's the first time I've seen somebody go crazy about somebody like, tremendous talent like Taylor Swift. I thought we were talking football here.
Dan Fouts, thanks for joining us on this sporting planet, my friend. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Skippy.